I mean, there's a lot going on in social care. We know that. We know we're coming to the end of the financial year. We know there are a lot of tenders about opportunities. But we do know that many providers tell us that recruitment is still a problem for them. So I would guess that although the numbers are growing little by little, I think it probably makes sense, Ali, if we crack on and you give us the wit and wisdom of the brilliant skills for care, please.
Thank you. Yes, certainly. I was looking at the agenda for today and knowing Purple Tribes and knowing Neil an awful lot. I don't want to tread on their toes in regards to what they're going to talk about, because I think they have very specific angles of the market that they're looking at, and that's really important. But what I did want to talk about really, and I shall put a little presentation up in just a second, is very much around what it means to us as employers when we start thinking about expanding businesses and thinking about employing staff. So am I okay to share my screen there, Peter? Thank you. Bear with me a moment. Let me find that lovely presentation I've just been working on. It's really difficult when we start thinking about recruiting people and how we move to that recruitment environment best, how we think about the development of our business and how we think about how that development is going to include our most important resources. So let's see, here we go. Can you see that? There is a nod going on, marvelous. And if I could see the rest of my screen, I would start the presentation. For some reason, that's not going through. So if you're all right with that view, I'm afraid I can't see the other button. Thank you very much. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Ali Porteus. I am the locality manager in your local area. I've been in post for a little while here. But in previous to this, I have worked in the field for a very long time, and I have seen an awful lot of different things that have gone on in the businesses. But the consistent thing that I find is around how people plan their recruitment. Our biggest resources are recruitment. We really understand now, more recently, how things have been going for everybody and how if we don't have a look to the future, we can't work with the organisations that are commissioning the work we do. So I wanted, first of all, just to think about the workforce planning and how workforce planning goes for you all. First of all, I need everybody to understand what their business is looking at. People have come into the market recently, and it's wonderful to see new people coming in, and it's wonderful to see people having the opportunity to start up new businesses, but it has to be planned. It has to be planned not only for the people that you're going to be providing outcomes for, but more importantly for how the business is going to be sustained. I've worked with a number of people who have worked with care providers and then found that their care providers have changed, or the people who are coming to them on a regular basis who they've trusted have changed. And when you dig a bit deeper, it's often because of the culture within that organisation. So when we think about developing and recruiting people, the first thing we need to do is make sure that our workforce plan is structured in a way that reflects the future needs of not only the people we serve, but the people we employ. And that means thinking not just about, I've got to get somebody to fill those hours, but thinking about how you're going to support those individuals and how you're going to ensure that they have the skills and the resources that you need to be able to provide the services that are required of you. When we look at a workforce plan, we think about how we're going to plan the future of developing our services. We think about analysing things. What do we need? What might change? Are we working with a group of people who are elderly? Are we working with people who are end of life? Are we working with younger people who are going to have expanded needs? So planning that into the future and thinking 6 months to a year ahead is a very, very good start for this, because that allows you to say that this week, my business is providing care for 300 hours. This time in a month's time, I want to be providing 350 hours. So how am I going to cover those 50 hours? I'm going to have to employ somebody. How am I going to do that? And I know that a number of different tools are going to be discussed as we go along. But employing somebody isn't just about putting an advert out. And as Dudley says, it's not just about the local people. It's about thinking about, once that person has been onboarded, how is your culture going to support them to be a really positive gain to your company? How are you going to train them? How are you going to bring them into the skills that you want them to have? I would also, just touching on what Dudley said earlier about why are we employing always from externally. I don't know whether many of you are aware of some of the numbers that have been coming through around immigration and how a lot of the data that's coming out of central government needs to be identified and analysed a bit better. Internal migration is the biggest migration route in this country at the moment. And I was quite surprised to hear this morning, but internal migration is when somebody comes from one part of the country and relocates to another part of the country. And on the back of what Dudley said, I would be planning and thinking very carefully about my internal migration opportunities. If I can bring people in from outside of the country, why can't I bring people to this area inside of the country? And think about the support they're going to need, which is exactly the same in many ways as the starting point where we start for external employees and when we're looking at international recruitment. So planning doesn't just mean advertising possibly locally. You may be wanting to advertise in other areas of the country and offer people resources and the ability to embed in your area in the same way as we would offer people for international backgrounds. So one of the things that's really key in planning is a lot of talk goes on. We sit here and we talk an awful lot and we talk about different processes, but doing is the important part. Once you've got an idea of how you want to go about recruiting and how you want to develop your business, actually do it. But doing is only of value if you pair it with reviewing, because doing and reviewing come together really closely. Just because we're doing the right thing today doesn't mean it's the right thing tomorrow. So we will need to think about how tomorrow is going to influence, and do we need to review what we're doing and how we're responding to our challenges and do something slightly different. Now, when you're looking at your workforce plan and you're looking at some of the information that you need, I would always direct you back to our workforce data set. It is one of the most useful tools I had as a manager, being able to pitch against other people's working environments and being able to get a real feel as to what was happening in my local area and what people were focusing in on. The workforce data set is a vital tool to successful planning. If you need any assistance on how that can help you, come back to me. That's what I'm here for. So just thinking a little bit more about workforce. Oh, sorry, gone back one. Too many. Now I'm going to struggle getting back there, aren't I? Just going back to the previous slide, which I'm going to try and do now. Oh, dear me. There are various products. I do apologize. I've hit a slide too quickly, and now my technology is failing me. But there are various products that you can use to ensure that you have a strong environment to work from. What I want you to think about is when you look at the workforce culture, you need to think about your values. What are the values of your organization and how are you communicating those values? You need to think, are there traditions within your organization? Many of us have little traditions around birthdays, Christmases, and things of that nature, or even celebrations of good behaviors. We need to think about what our beliefs are. Do we believe that people have inclusion? Do we believe that people have the right to come back and challenge some of the issues that have gone on in our environment? Have we got a strong whistleblowing environment that allows people to communicate? We look at today, and there's a very interesting piece of law coming out today that a lot of us will be affected by within health services. And that basically is allowing people to address those with power and say, we think we may need to look at one of these problems. And I think that's a really important part of the work that we do when we look at culture. And that means, particularly when we're looking at people who've come from a different area to where we're living, how are they supported to address the challenges of power? How are they able to say, actually, I think we can do this better, or I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this? How do we support interactions? Do we encourage all our staff to look at interactions with the people they're providing with honesty and openness and come back to people? Are behaviours positive? Are our attitudes what we want to see in the future? I think it's really important to talk about culture, because culture, to my mind now, is what we're selling our jobs on. And it's how we are looking and supporting with people in the future. Culture is a really, really important part of the business model in today's world. We look at positive workforce cultures and we want to talk about what is good and outstanding. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, that would have all orientated around the way we provide services. And we wouldn't have been focusing in on how that affects the people who work for us. Now, culture is a vital part of your advertising campaign as well. I would always let people know what sort of environment they can come into. And again, talking about how we support our clients should be the key to how we support our staff. Do we put people at the heart of our business, in which case it's not just the people that we provide care? Do we put our staff at the heart of the business? Are we aware of their well-being needs so that we can help them give the best they can? A worn-out member of staff is a risk to your medication, your safeguarding, everything. But an engaged member of staff who feels that their culture is there so that they can be listened to if they're finding it a bit overwhelming, or if they've got more energy to give us. Some staff will go elsewhere to give that energy. We want them to be offering those energies within our own business environments. Are we ensuring that our managers really understand what inclusion, equality, and diversity really means, not just to the people we provide work for, but to the people that we're advertising jobs to? If I see a job advert that says, do you want to be part of change? I will respond to that. If I see a job advert that says, would you like a job as a manager? I'll probably overlook it. So our values and our cultures can really show a positive way to recruit. And I think in this harsh world that we're living in, anything that makes you feel good about the job and wants you to turn up in is going to encourage you to apply for that role. Now, when we look at international recruits, I think it's really, really important to touch upon this, and also thinking about these internal migration opportunities that may be available to you. First impressions count. When people come to this country to work, they are doing us a huge service. Granted, they're coming to our country, they're working within a new culture, but they're doing a service to the people that we cannot provide care for at the moment. So think about what you've told them about the job. Have you told them what the job was really like? Have you given somebody the opportunity maybe to speak to an existing member of staff, to talk about how that job feels on a day-to-day basis? Has the information been clearly given? If somebody comes over to this country, think carefully about how they're dealing with language. Many years ago, I was an English language teacher, and I would sit with students and I would watch them nod repeatedly as I told them about grammar and construction of language. Then I would ask them to construct something, and they were unable to provide that information back to me because nodding was what they did to confirm that they'd heard me, not that they'd understood me. So I think it's really important to go back and check that what you're passing on is clearly understood. How has any new worker been embedded in the team? Have you told the new team about somebody? Have you told them, we've got a new member of staff coming on board? Their skills have been this. Their strengths that we saw at interview were this. We really believe that they could bring this to our organisation. Who's going to pair up with them? Who's going to buddy them? Who's going to give them that little bit of cultural understanding of the things that are important? Who's going to tell them where the loo is and how to make a cup of tea? Now, these things are vitally important, and I know Neil and I have spoken often of the importance of simple things. If you've got a new member of staff coming along, make sure their parking space is clearly identified on their first day. Make sure there are people there to welcome them. And this is even more important when you've got people who aren't local to the team or who are new to our industry. Really considering how they're going to be embedded as a new worker is key to the longevity of their time. And Neil will show you various processes and policies that show very clearly that how we deal with somebody on the first day directly impacts the longevity of the time they stay with us as an employee. So think about also how you're evidencing this. I say evidencing this because it is so important for well-led to be evidenced. I know that in this room and in many rooms that I sit in, there are some fantastically creative managers who don't shout about their skills. Dudley and I were talking about this the other day, how important it is to stand there and say, I'm doing good work. I'm doing good work because I am providing services, not just for the people who are getting great outcomes, but also I'm doing good work because I am providing good carers for the future. So I think it's really, really important that we think about what that first impression is, how you're going to gather the evidence, and then also, as I said before, you do, and then you reflect. Talk to those new members of staff and say, how did we do? Once they've embedded in a little while, say, what would we do better in the future? So why is it really important? Again, we create positive work placements to create an identity. We want to improve the quality and consistency of personalization of our service. We want to attract the right people. We want to make staff feel engaged, valued, and motivated. And we want to improve retention and reduce recruitment costs. Now, we do this through a plan that looks at not only how we're going to embed people, but how we're going to train them. So think really, really carefully, and I'm going to come back to training in just a minute, but how you train people is key to your retention, and how you retain is key to your costs. How your costs impact you is key to your business development. So planning is the key for all of this. Improving your reputation by shouting it from the rooftops does you no harm either. And of course, culture is becoming a really big part of CQC's requirements of us. So when we're thinking about workforce culture, please look at your organizational influences, look at the social influences and the environmental influences. I would suggest that when you receive this, this PowerPoint, that you go through these titles, and they're in there for a reason. Your visions, aims, and objectives need to be clearly identified if you want to be able to pass it on to somebody else. Know what you're doing, then other people will know it too. So please use this structure as a bit of a key point. Now, I've put some links in here because I'm aware that there are an awful lot of things going on at the moment in regards to some of our services. And I wanted to be able to ask you to take a look at some of these links. The first one that I think is really important is the reform agenda. The reform agenda is impacting us all at the moment. It's impacting us at Skills for Care, and it will be impacting you. Being aware of what that looks like and how it will make a difference to your business is key. International recruitment comes with a code of conduct, and unfortunately that code of conduct is not being used by all providers at the moment. And I think that if you are going to provide somebody with a job who has come to this country, you need to be on top of the code of conduct. You need to be tying in with Peter and Dudley's work that they do with international recruitment. You need to be really understanding the challenges that are coming up day by day for people who are recruiting internationally. And think carefully about how you can ensure the experience of people coming over here is a positive one. You can help them grow in a country that they want to be in, and that you buy them a brolly for all this rain. I think that's really important. I joke about the brolly side of things, but a number of people have come to this country not even with the right coats for our weather. So all these things and these moral responsibilities we have as employers must be considered and can be referred back to when we look at the international the publications from the government. I've put in there the workforce strategy for the South London Partnership. I think that's a really important thing to be on top of, because it does identify some of the strategic challenges that our area is looking at and how they are being addressed. Now, it was written at a time prior to an awful lot of the challenges that we've got at the moment, and I know they are updating it constantly, but it shows us the framework that we are working to financially and in regards to the workforce challenges and the changes that are going to be coming down the line. We know we have an aging population. We know we have a smaller working population. And if you can begin to look at that and plan it, it really does help. I've just realized, Peter, that I've got the wrong connection on two connections on this PowerPoint. So before I send it to you, I will alter that and put in the mayoral project. The mayoral project is really important. A lot of money has been coming down the line for that at the moment, supporting people in education and supporting people in different areas of personal development. This is becoming quite an important tool. We're getting more and more information about it at the moment, and a number of training hubs are coming up to support the differences that are coming along. So we are getting a lot of crossovers between social care and medical care training, and I will alter that link to make sure it's the right one, Peter, before I send it to you. There has been some talk around the WDF areas that many of you are involved with, the Workforce Development Fund. And I hope you're all aware now that that will be coming away from Skills for Care in the next couple of years and moving over to central government. And central government will be looking at identifying training and training packages and how you guys can apply for those training packages. And that will be coming along as we get more information. It's still a very sketchy area and we don't have enough information to share on that at the moment. However, if you do have an Ask account already, and you have people who are undertaking training that you hope to claim back from the Workforce Development Fund, that is still going to be available, but put those claims in as soon as possible. And please be aware that funding that you have not agreed previously should be spoken over to with the partnerships or with your representative for the Workforce Development Fund. And if I can help in any way at all, I will do. Training is out there. Training is free. Your local authorities are providing training as well. And there is still an awful lot of funding in regards to the Workforce Development Fund that is there, but you've got to have to chase it down. I hope that gives a little bit of an overview of some of the things you wanted me to talk about today, Peter.
Thank you, Ali. There's a huge amount of information wrapped up in there. And there are a couple of points. You mentioned buying people a raincoat. A little story. One of the dom care providers I work for, he had a real problem with turnover of staff. And so we sorted it out. And the way we sorted it out was very simple. I persuaded him to put his hand in his pocket, and he bought all the staff a decent long waterproof overcoat for the winter and some waterproofs. And all the coats got hood on it. And instead of buying the cheapest, tattiest polo shirts that he could find, he bought decent ones, and it paid for itself within 8 weeks, because every member of staff he took on cost him £3 to employ. And buying a whole pallet of clothing for his staff cost him less than £5. So he was quids in, and he found that staff were then bringing their friends along as a recruitment aid. If you come and work here, you get a coat. Bingo. And I know we go on and on and on and on about training, but every time we meet with CQC, we are told how poor social care training is. And why don't more people use WDF? Because it's available, it's good quality. And the best way to be able to show CQC or local authority quality monitors your training is to have accredited training, because you've got a certificate.
No, it's very important. Thanks for sharing that, Ali, and then obviously for the insight there, Peter, from buying raincoats. I'm sure everyone's going to rush out afterwards and start looking on their local stores or potentially Amazon, who knows. But no, I think it's important with training as well. I've actually been doing training for some other health sectors, and training, it's not just a factor for just social care, but other sectors as well. So don't feel as if social care or the poor cousin or sister relation. Getting people to do training is sometimes very difficult. Going back to it, it's about organizing, getting people together, structuring it so people can come to training, because it's not the fact that people don't want to come to training. It's providers say, oh, I haven't got the time. Time has been one of the issues to worry about. But but if you're going to demonstrate it, CQC, the first thing they're going to look for is your matrix, your table, and actually getting the most of it is important. Speaking with your local providers, local councils, to see what's available. Skills for Care, there is a lot there. And it's the one thing that you probably think, I'll do this tomorrow. And before you know it, tomorrow never comes, as they say. Yeah, go on, Ali.
Well, I was just thinking, you said there people don't have time for training, which is a really interesting idea, isn't it? Because if you don't have time for training, then what do you have time for? Because if your staff aren't trained and they don't have the ability to deliver the service, you've got no business. So if you don't have time for training, that's basically would say to me, you're not making time to develop your business and support your clients the way they need it. And that's the way CQC looks at it. If the excuse is you don't have time for training, then you don't have time for your business. And I think that's a really, really important thing to take on board as they move into a new form of assessments and the way they're going to be looking to us.
I agree. I think the other thing about culture, which is hugely important, is actually setting your culture so things are done in time. Just very quickly, I know when it comes to my car insurance and MOT, people always forget one or the other. And if you don't have it at the same time, potentially you forget one or the other. So structuring everything so they come at the same time. So mandatory training, you can start, for example, at the beginning of the year, so you know everyone has it, and then you can have another update either quarterly or every 6 months. So you're always covering yourself. So actually structuring it in makes it the culture is there in place, and you don't have to think about has this person, has that person. You just have the sign up. So I think there's things that we can be proactive of as providers as well. And we shouldn't rely on it's someone else's job, because CQC are not going to say, okay, someone else's job. They'll just look, it's not done. So yeah, sorry, Peter, go on.
I think Ali mentioned the Mayor's project. I think it's worth mentioning the link between the Mayor's project and the Living Wage Trust, because the two are linking together, and all the ICSs across London, that's the NHS basically, will be paying the London living wage either within this financial year, or they will move into it within the next financial year. And that is going to create a more competitive area for social care staff migrating across. And I was going into town for a meeting the other day, and on the way back, I picked up a Standard, and there was an advert in there for, I think it was University College London. They were looking for cleaners, and the cleaners were being paid 23.5 to 24.5 a year. And they obviously valued their cleaners. It was a very comprehensive advert. And I have known social care staff leave what I think is a much more skilled profession, social care, and move into contracted cleaning because of simply money. Linking back with the situation with the Mayor and the London living wage, you've got a number of local authorities are also running the accreditation now onto the London living wage, and they're requiring it as part of their contracted work. And this is having an impact because their auditors are now checking to make sure that the staff for the contracted companies are being paid that amount of money, not less than that. Are there any more questions for Ali? Because I see that Scott's arrived, so we could move on to Scott. No questions. Okay, thanks again, Ali. And Scott, good morning.
So, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Like Phoenix Nights, can you hear me now? Yeah, unfortunately, we've got some technical IT problems this morning with our Office 365. So, the slides that I kind of stayed up late to get finished last night, I can't do. So I will distribute them to you after, Peter. But that won't stop us having a good session now and talking through what I think is a key topic. So, yeah, I think we've got about 15 minutes. Is that right, Peter? Great. Yeah, one of the key things I want to speak to everybody about today is that, you know, I think everybody's starting to feel the pinch now, the true impact of Brexit, which seems to be something we've talked about years ago, is really kicking in. The labour force really is stretched thin. I know one of the recent reports I'd read, we're at a 1-to-1 situation where you pretty much could have everybody off benefits, and we'd fill all the jobs. We still have 100,000+ vacancies still empty. So the need, and for overseas or international workers is super high, but that means the competition for staff again is also really high. What I would say is that we've been fortunate because we provide, if you don't know what Purple Tribe does, we provide recruitment process outsourcing or managed service recruitment, where we act as a care provider's in-house recruitment specialist. So we do the recruitment advertising, we provide the applicant tracking software, the DBS, the references. So we take the pressure away from the business to fill permanent positions. We're not an agency, by the way, so don't mistake us for an agency. We don't have any temp cover or anything like that. We do executive headhunting for senior management positions, registered managers, team leaders, finance marketing directors. And we also provide consultancy for organisations that might be bigger and have in-house recruitment teams. We do provide consultancy services to strengthen their in-house recruitment capabilities. But what Peter had asked me to talk to you guys about today really was in and around the situation of how do you find permanent workers in this current marketplace. The situation that, sorry, I glitched a bit then. The situation that we find ourselves in at the moment is, I think what we're seeing is that there are a lot of people who have gone for the overseas sponsorship recruitment with mixed results. We see that some of the best providers, some of the outstanding providers that we work with are supplementing their teams with that, but that is not, by their own admission, not where they want to be with regards to, being the silver bullet to fix everything. It's just to supplement some of the more challenging, hard to fill roles, but obviously that comes with great expense. We're also seeing some customers that had believed it to be the silver bullet for them, sponsor people for 3 to 5 years, only to find that after 6 months into the business, the individual's left and is going somewhere else for better pay, better money, better working conditions, leaving them, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 pounds out of pocket and back to square one, and really with retention that was no better than when they were recruiting locally. If you look at what we're doing, which works really well, the results that we get for our clients, is the most common thing we're seeing is that we are, as a recruitment consultancy, our advertising channels cover a broad range of things. Whether you like Indeed or not, many people blame Indeed for its high costs and low return. I would counter that and say that in 95% of the recruitment health checks that I have done, most recently with Trinity Home Care Group down in London, whether it be with Forever Care up in Newcastle, whichever organisation have been, whichever part of the country have been that have had issues with Indeed and the ability to attract and source quality candidates, I would say that the recruitment health check that I personally conducted found that the biggest problem is with the recruitment process, the management of that recruitment process and the execution of the stages. And there is a significant gap between what people believe is happening and what is actually happening on a daily, weekly, monthly, consistent basis. And that is everything from, the intensity of ringing candidates. So for example, if you look at our model, we'll ring every candidate regardless of the quality of the CV. Obviously, we only work with local-based talent. We don't work with sponsored candidates, but we ring everybody because the CV is not the best predictor of anybody's talent or skills or ability. We chase everybody 3 to 4 times via phone, email, text. So the volume that we deploy, but bear in mind when people outsource their recruitment to us, that is our only job, is to ring, drive recruitment and manage this problem. But the intensity that we use is that we're able to speak to more people, select better quality from a larger talent pool. We also, because we understand Indeed and how to optimize it via SEO and how to actually utilize the functionality, we're able to drive down Indeed cost or pay per click and actually increase candidate application rates. So at the end of the day, there are only 3 ways you're really going to find staff, and that is refer a friend, and that has its limitations. It should always be part of your recruitment strategy. I've been a big fan of, I like the Care Friends app because I think what it does, it helps people manage a process. But I think what a lot of people wrongly assume with, for example, the Care Friends app is that it's going to do the work for you. And it won't. It won't pick up the phone. It won't speak to people. It won't drive the recommendation process. It is a piece of technology and a tool. We're actually fully integrated with the Care Friends app. So our recruiters can use the Care Friends app within our applicant tracking or our ecosystem. But it still has to have a person driving the activity and driving the calls, the same way that, when you're using your advertising, you've got to be on it all the time, every day. So refer a friend should be part of your network, but the problem is if you're a small provider, 30, 40 staff, you ask everybody today, who do you know? They tell you everybody they know. Then next month you get another 3 resignations. You can't ask that same 30 or 40 people, who else do you know? Because if you look at the demographics, and I'm 50 years old, Peter's my newest friend. You know, I'm at an age where I don't make that many new friends at this age. It's all about who would you know and what your network is. If you've given everybody up, your refer a friend thing can really just supplement and just be top ups. Your other ways, you know, out into the community and doing that, but that takes, again, a lot of physical effort and time. And again, because it's whether you're putting flyers, advertising, stuff like that, again, it's a lot of effort, which is not often quantifiable. Then the only other way then is online, and you've got Facebook, you've got paid job boards, adverts, stuff like that. You know, LinkedIn's only really for senior executives. So really, if you look at all our customers and all our success stories, it's all local based talent, all through online advertising. You know, Facebook can be a great success, but again, budgets can run away with you if you do not know what you're doing. Same with Indeed. And the bottom line, if you're spending £1,000, you know, we've seen companies spending £2,000 on Indeed and getting no return, when really the problem is they're not ringing everybody the same day. They're not chasing the people. You know, we've just had a tough conversation with a client yesterday because the managers are saying they're too busy. They're wanting to cancel interviews this afternoon and tomorrow and put them back to next Thursday, Friday, because they're too busy. Now, yes, they're busy, but the management have got high agency costs. And as soon as you pass it up the line, management, well, we'll find somebody. Let's not cancel those interviews. We'll find somebody to interview those people tomorrow. But without that insight, what will be happening is, from the owner's point of view, is they won't see that the candidates would be cancelled. They won't see what they'll be getting bumped to next week. And then what will happen next week is they'll get 4 interviews rescheduled. They'll probably get 4 no-shows. And then it'll be a case of, well, nobody wants to work in care. Nobody's committed. It's because they've gone elsewhere. They've got other jobs. You know, when we speak to people, you know, when we ring people up on behalf of, say, Rock Care Group, you'd be amazed that hardly anybody knows that you're ringing from Rock, because they've applied to so many jobs. You know, if you look at the names of the businesses, we've got 3 clients: Westwood Care, Westgate Care, Westerly Care. They all sound the same. Everybody's something care. So it's very hard. When it comes to recruitment, it's the management of the recruitment process is king. It trumps everything. And that starts at a well-written advert that is fully optimized. Then it comes down to the actual management of that process, ringing candidates, driving telephone activity, multiple contacts, emails, text. Then it's down to swiftly getting people in for interview and delivering a quality interview. You know, if we look at Rock Care Group, they're outstanding, only got 13% staff turnover, hardly any agency use. We have never had so many candidates ringing, asking us, have I got the job? That's the best interview I've ever been to. That's how care should be delivered. They're so good at selling themselves that we hardly ever lose to competition. You know, and it's not down to pay, it's down to them putting the best foot forward. And then really what it comes down to, that next piece, is that once the offer is made and you've given a good account yourself, getting the offer out, the contract out quickly, keeping in contact with that candidate, and then managing that onboarding process, the DBS, the references. And if there are delays to that process, you have to be the one that's accountable and owns the actual management of the candidate's expectations and communication if there are delays. Because if they've got to wait 4 or 5 weeks, do you know if they can afford to be out of work 4 or 5 weeks? Can they? Is it an issue? You know, you need to know the candidate. So I know it's a bit of a whirlwind tour, but you know, in 15 minutes there's a lot to cover. But I would say to everybody, I've been saying this for 6 years since I first came into this sector. Process is the biggest barrier to care providers, but mainly because they don't have experienced recruiters that have the expertise, the know-how, and drive to execute and drive recruitment in what is a really cutthroat, fast pace. And I say that, but you know, speed doesn't have to be at the behest of quality. You know, we still need to inject quality into it, but that needs to be, like I said, from job advert, screening, booking in for interviews, quickly getting the interviews processed, giving a great interview, but investing more time in candidates learning about them, and then the execution piece. You know, retention we could talk about all day long, but I'm only here to talk to you about recruitment. So in 15 minutes, I hope I've given you some little nuggets about why and where I would be focusing. If we were working with you today, I've just come off the phone to a company, a residential company, 14 healthcare assistants need to be filled. They've got no in-house recruitment. They're using, you know, £3,000 a week, you know, on agency. And this is just the norm. They can afford to do it. They don't like paying it, but they're realizing maybe we could do it a little bit differently. But they're going about the recruitment in totally the wrong way. So its process is king. As I said, we'll send out some information via Peter, and if anybody you know, does want to get in touch via LCAS, or we can send our details out, you know, we'd gladly have a chat with you, and if I can help in any way, I would gladly do so.
Thanks for that, Scott. It's been very helpful in sharing that information. I wonder if anyone had any questions they wanted to ask Scott very quickly in regards to, you've got this ball of knowledge here. We've had Skills for Care, talked about funding. With Purple Tribe, they've been doing a lot of time. I know them very well. So if any questions anyone would like to ask, anything around recruitment, here's a chance to ask Scott, or anything about Purple Tribe as well.
And Scott, do put your contact details in the chat in advance of circulating the info.
Okay, yeah. I think one quick thing, because obviously maybe no questions is good news, but I think what's quite interesting is when the workforce recruitment and retention funds came out, and I think just to put some context into this, saying, you know, is it possible? Well, we're maybe a little bit different. When we look at workforce recruitment and retention fund, we did a 12-week project with the London Borough of Havering and Havering Care Association, and from us, you know, we signed up. We were focused in just in that borough, and we had about 40 organisations out of their framework agreement signed up. And in 12 weeks, with a standing start, with spending about £3,500, nearly £4,000 a month, but split between 45 providers. In 12 weeks, we filled 97 permanent care worker positions in just 12 weeks with local based staff. You know, there was 3 organisations wiped out their agency in just 12 weeks. And that was not recruiting internationally, just using Indeed, using the same pot that those organisations were already using. But if you were to have looked at what we spent as one organisation servicing those clients versus what those clients, 45 clients combined, were spending, each one would have been at least spending £1,000 a month on Indeed. So that's £45,000 a month on Indeed minimum. Those companies would have been spending a month. To our £3,500, £4,000 a month, and we're filling 33. You know, we just one recruit, we're filling 33 positions a month. You know, and that was a standing start on a pilot project. You know, we could have got better at that. We could have got more. We could have grown more if we'd have had more vacancies. So when people say it's not possible, I would counter that and say it's totally possible. You know, and if anybody wanted to speak to Rock, who we're looking to double the size of their business in the last 18 months, take from 150 to 300 staff. You know, they tell you that, you know, moving into new areas like Sunderland, Durham, Stockton, you know, where you've got highly competitive rates, it's doable. It's just, you've just got to be better than everybody else, you know. So the people are looking for careers in care. You know, we're getting tons of applicants. Yes, we get lots of international. Yes, we get a lot of, you know, people that are not appropriate, but that's not what you need to worry about. You just need to know, if I need to hire, can I hire 3 to 5 people a month to meet my needs? And the answer is yes, if you go about it the right way. So yeah, I'll put my information in the chat. And if anybody wants to reach out, you know, please do. And like I said, we'd love to help you if you are struggling.
Thanks, Scott. I think there's a huge amount of information being thrown at people this morning. It's a shame there's not more people, because then it would be spread out a bit thinner. But the point Scott's making, we see time and again, and it's reinforced when we look at exit interviews, and many organisations do not do exit interviews, or certainly don't do them very well. because they don't actually want to know why people leave. They say they do, but they don't want to know that it might be their own fault that people are leaving. They don't think there's any issues at all in their organization. And you know, we have looked at, people have said to us, well, look, these are the interview questions I use, and there's pages of them. You certainly don't need that at a first interview. You need some very basic details. And if you're the least bit inclined to think that person would make a good member of staff, you take them on and you check them out. Because if you don't take them on, somebody else is going to steal them very quickly. And if, you know, if you're at the bottom of the wage scale, getting 10, 12 pounds an hour, you can't afford to hang about for a week waiting for somebody else to employ you.
Yeah, I think it's very important what you've said, Peter. I think recruitment, as Scott said it, that there have always been vacancies required in health and social care. It's not something new, and everyone's talking as if it's something that just happened overnight. You're always going to have competitors. You're always going to have to look at different ways of how to attract new staff, be it overseas or be it locally. What are you doing in your services? What are you doing differently? You're not coming into this sector to be paid millions and to get overly rich, but it's about other values that work when coming into for your workforce. Things such as how flexible are you with your working conditions? Are you accommodating staff? Do they feel that they belong? A lot of work that I'm doing is around the belonging of staff, and you can see why people have stayed for maybe 20 years plus working in an organization compared to other organizations where they have turnovers of anything from 1 to 6 months very quickly. So actually the culture plays a big part, but actually spending time to use whether Purple Tribe professionally or other different body to support with your working practice or in-house, spending time on it is also hugely important. It adds to your service, and having a pool of talent is great and hugely important when you're doing that. But do connect, Peter and I are always sharing elements from Skills for Care or any other sort of funded offering for support. Please do use it, or via Scott. It's really important when helping not just actually the workforce, but actually quality staff as well. And I think that's another area to look at as well.
I mean, just a quick question to those of you out there. I mean, there's, you know, 20 or so employers on the call this morning. Are any of you not having employment, you know, recruitment problems at the moment? Are any of you absolutely full of staff and turning folks away?
I don't think anyone seems to want to admit that, Peter. It might be a question that they'll keep them in the back. Listen, you all are providers, and whether you have too many staff or not enough staff or quality staff, it's always going to be, you can never have enough quality staff. So do please share with us as well any good stories, because Skills for Care are here. You don't have to give away your trade secrets, but actually maybe the process you've done and what you've done to sort of like get to where you've got to is also hugely important, because at the end of the day, all of this is done for the care that we're providing for the end user. And if the end user is getting the best care possible through best trained staff, best recruitment processes, I think that's all we want to try and do. And I think that's hugely important in going forward.
And I think a couple of points that somebody that's doesn't have any recruitment issues. Well done, Grasmere. And just a couple of points. Neil is due to come at around 11 o'clock, but what I would say to you is that the comments we've had around the new CQC inspection and the comments from CQC themselves, when they talk to staff in organizations, the sort of questions they ask are about how those people, those recruits, those employees interact with the policies of the company, be that safeguarding or whatever it might be. And they find that frequently the staff don't have much knowledge of the policy. The policies may all be on the shelf, they're all available, but the staff don't know about them. They don't understand them. So as an organization, you need to look at particularly your key policies, such as candor, safeguarding, complaints, comments, compliments, and do one-pagers and make sure that all of your staff understand them, so that when CQC asks them, and if you look at the new inspection regime, there will be much more done remotely, and there will be much more contact with your staff, and you will have no control over that. So your staff need to be able to answer the questions truthfully and to the benefit of the organization. And this can be one of the reasons why staff are leaving, because they're not confident in the work they're doing. We can come back, we've got plans to come back and look at retention of staff at a later date. But I think it's been said previously, one of the managers who I've worked with for a number of years, she looked very closely at their performance around recruitment, retention, their entire staffing policy. And she said, I realized that a lot of the problems were down to me. It was the way that I operated. I wasn't doing some things very well. It wasn't my skill set. And then she said, I got somebody else in, and they did a much better job than I did because they were good at that job. And our retention went up very, very well. And they then had more money to spend on better training. So they became a better employer. And they've gone on in leaps and bounds. But they've looked to develop their skills and their strengths. They knew what their weaknesses were. And I think that's important for organizations. And that's, Dudley, for example, does that on a very regular basis. And I'm sure Ali's done it many times over the years.
Indeed. Peter, I think whilst we're waiting for Neil to come in, just a few things that we've been doing on the side. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen, Peter. Is that okay? Very quickly. Is that okay, Peter?
Oh, can't see it.
Okay, I'm going to share it now. I'm just saying, is that okay with you? That was what I was going to say.
Aha.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to have the same wonderful thing. Here we go. Right, so just a few things that have been going on. As with LCAS, we've been heavily involved with recruitment across the board, and a few things that we're just allowing people just to understand. We've been doing a lot around international recruitment, and there's been a lot of questions around what the changes are. We will be having a meeting next week. The Home Office will be presenting virtually. We present a virtual meeting of the Home Office on the 27th of February at 2:30 to 3:30. Peter will probably add in the comments a Zoom link. There's a lot around dependents and the change of the lack of dependents being allowed to come over with staff as well. That's going to be taking place, I believe, from next month. So it's something that people should be aware of. So going back to even Scott's point, there is stats that the attraction for overseas workers coming into the country may lessen. So be aware before you are actually trying to attract overseas workers. Also think about the changing dynamics that are taking place. So that's one of the areas that are hugely important in regards to that. We also have been running some live events as well for international recruitment. We've got our first live event taking place in North London at Evershot Street on the 29th of February. We're going to have Skills for Care there, believe it or not. We're going to have some other important other individuals, CQC and others actually in the room on the day as well. It's a whole day where you actually get to speak to lawyers and other individuals such as ourselves for that day as well. So Peter's probably going to share that. And then finally, we've been involved with a project with South East London around recruitment and a recruitment hub to support the local providers. They're looking to provide support for the care providers, training, support, and other things. And it's funded as well. So please do look out for it. As Ali said, there is money that's been sent out by the government that's available but also as well, it shouldn't stop you from looking in every way possible. Do not just rely on overseas recruitment, but also as well, look at things across the board. And as he said, we've got Scott here from Purple Tribe, we've got Skills for Care, and hopefully we'd have Neil Eastwood as well, who is probably speaking everywhere nationally, but he's provided some software which allows referrals from friends. I'm not going to say too much, but it really works well, because in a lot of the work environments that I go into, they actually, if you work somewhere, you're probably going to tell your friend, and then tell your friend, and before you know it, you've got lots of friends working together. I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing, but definitely it's the way it seems to work in social care. So bear that in mind. It's a really wonderful app to use as well. But please get in touch. Peter has left some of the information in the chat box. So please continue to share, but also be in touch with us as well. And Peter, I'm not sure if Neil is in yet.
He is. I can see his happy smiling face.
Yeah, and I've forced myself to smile and be happy. Hey, hello everyone. Oh, Ali's here too. Hi. And Scott. Yeah, hey Scott.
Hi Neil, you all right?
Right.
I don't believe we've got all these great people under one roof. Yeah, I think we're very lucky. So yeah, and I think you are meant to be the main event, Neil. So there you go.
I'm the warm-up act for Scott, I think. And I haven't got a purple wall, which I really want one now. So yeah, and hi everyone. I'm going to and thanks Dudley. I'm just going to I think take 15-20 minutes and give you a kind of overview of life as you highlighted, Dudley. We're moving into uncertain times with overseas recruitment. I know probably Scott's going to talk more about that. And I wanted to share with you some sort of my thoughts on where we should go, how things are looking, looking at local recruitment in more detail. And I'm sure Ali and others will have lots to say as well. So shall I just dive in and give people a little overview of my thinking?
The floor is yours, Neil. Please.
Thank you. Great. Let me see if can you see this now? My little minefield.
We can indeed.
Now, of course, this is social care, that field, if you want to walk across it and find there's something happening somewhere that's not pleasant. So I'm going to try and give you a positive view of 2024 as well, and particularly from the point of view of recruitment and retention. What I wanted to focus on in the short time I have is to look at a couple of macro trends. And again, I'm sure Ali and Scott will comment further on this. To just look at what I think is coming up from a workforce point of view, and looking at how you can work with your recruitment channel to get it match fit for what is happening at the moment and what has happened. A little idea of how I would have a recruitment mix in the London sort of area demographics. What would I be doing? So this is sort of what I thought I'd talk about. We have imminently, of course, as I'm sure you're aware, changes to the minimum wage, and this has really interesting implications for social care. Broadly, you would think it's a kind of a good thing, but I don't think it's altogether good news. And we are seeing a big increase coming up very soon, and what that tends to do is lift the floor for everybody. So it doesn't really help care workers individually, and there's talk about, well, we should have some sort of care premium. I think pay, of course, is an issue that always comes up and is super important, not least of which with the cost of living we're facing at the moment. But tying this to the NHS pay rates is really where we have to go. There appears to be zero appetite from the current government to do anything on this. Their stated mission is, or position rather, is that, well, you providers chose to be employers, so it's your responsibility. And we can all have a view about that, but clearly they're not intending to do much. And so we need to do other things than pay. But as far as April is concerned, what you can see here is that the care premium, and there was one, is slowly getting squeezed. And not only that, so the alternative jobs are becoming more appealing from a pay point of view, but also, of course, those employers are more able to offer perks, particularly hospitality with tips, and also retail workers. Tesco, for example, are offering discount off your food if you're a colleague, and that can be worth £500 or £600 a year. So we really struggle to compete, and I don't think that's necessarily going to help us. Also, we see what's called pay compression, and that means if you are a senior care worker, often you don't get an incremental increase. And so why would I want to be a senior care worker for a few pence more an hour with all of that responsibility? And this is causing problems in terms of a career progression pathway and people being willing to take on that extra responsibility. So generally speaking, frustrating from a pay point of view. Skills for Care have identified if you are 5 or more years of care experience, you're really only getting a few pence more an hour. And so we have to look at non-monetary ways of making the job as appealing as possible and find those people that are more likely to love the job. So we've got some challenges there. And I'm sure Dudley, I joined on the dot of 11, so I may have missed part of what Dudley was talking about in terms of overseas. You'll all be familiar with the changes. What we don't know is what will happen. We have reached now 23% of all care workers born overseas. I know in London, this is actually a much higher percentage. And if you go to other countries, we are now at a level overall in the UK overall at the same level as Germany and the US. There's only really Australia at 33% of born overseas that stands out as a kind of target we haven't yet hit. But we know the government is trying to reverse this, as Dudley mentioned. We don't know what the impact will be. It seems like when I talk to providers, up to 80% of those who've arrived have brought dependents. We just don't know what's going to happen. But if this doesn't reduce the numbers, they'll do something else until a new government comes in. So we've got this reversal in 2024, which is problematic. And we've also got, as you'll be aware, some very bad behaviour happening in the sector, which is not helping anybody at all. And in fact, there was this morning on the BBC, there was another article about exploitation of care workers. Of course, this just hampers the image and attracting people in. So all a bit frustrating. In that background, with that background, then we need to optimize the way we recruit and retain. And Scott's going to, I'm sure, give you his opinions on this as well. I've just picked home care providers here in terms of the stats I'm about to show you, because that is the most stressed of the subsectors of social care. And if you look about you talk to employers, and not many of them have a plan. Not as many as should do. So about half of employers have some kind of plan in mind when they're organising their recruitment. The rest of them, it's quite haphazard. But of those that have a plan, not many people measure progress. And it's so important, if you're making changes to your recruitment strategy and execution, that you measure what you're doing, so you know if something you did worked or didn't work. And there are applicant tracking systems now, software that allows you to manage your candidates at price points that are affordable for all care providers, and that wasn't previously the case. So there is help available, and it's so important to monitor what you do and whether it works. And just to give you a flavour for the impact of how the sources you recruit from, and I'm a big advocate of diversifying your sources and not relying on any particular one, but just to give you an idea of conversion ratios, I've picked some here, conversion ratios we would typically expect to see. I mentioned at the bottom, international is a bit too difficult to calculate, because you might, on the one hand, get swamped with applications unsolicited via Indeed, for example, or you might be using a partner to recruit, or you might be going overseas yourself to recruit, or you might be recruiting overseas workers who are already here and are looking for a different sponsor. So very difficult to say what that conversion ratio is. But if you look at the standard ways we might recruit, you can see there's a big range. Employee referral usually is the best in terms of conversion, along with returners, people who've left you ask to come back, and very localized recruitment. some of those, and typically all of those in the green, have only delivered a trickle of recruitment, your recruitment needs. So we've had to move into the world of job boards and an aggregator, particularly Indeed, which is second to the bottom. Programmatic advertising, they're probably best known as Google AdWords. It's a way of reaching people, knowing their viewing habits online, and presenting them with an advert for your job, in this case, at the moment at which they appear. So there's a little auction that happens, and if you win that auction, your ad is the thing that appears. As you can see, it's quite a poor hit rate in terms of reaching people that way. So we've got a whole range here. We tend to over-rely on internet job boards. Of course, they're the staple way of recruiting, but they are only targeting people who are actively looking for a job. So we really do need to be trying to spread our wings a bit more and recruit from various sources. If you look at your spend, and this is a sort of aggregated figures. So in the green here, we've got sort of what sort of hires you'd expect to get. I put the CareFriends figures in there, and CareFriends, as Dudley kindly mentioned, is a way of turbocharging your employee referrals. So employee referrals are always great. It's just there's not been many of them, and CareFriends app is attempting to maximize that channel. And that will, like renewable energy, sometimes the wind will blow and sometimes it won't. And that can depend on things like if you're a good employer and people want to work for you and they want their friends to come and work for you, or whether they're just waiting to leave because you keep shouting at them. So there is a variance in the level of employee referrals, but broadly this is what we would expect to see is between 20 and 30% you could get from an employee referral scheme. Most of the work of what you're getting is probably coming from job boards. Some providers have success with paid social, particularly Facebook. Others get frustrated with it, and so on. And then if you look at the cost side of it, the direct recruitment spend, we tend to spend the vast majority of our budget on job boards. I haven't put in international here. We think about a third, or a bit of between a third and 40% of providers in the UK have a sponsor license. In England have a sponsor license, not all using it, but that will be diverting a lot of spend into international recruitment. And again, that's probably now on the cusp of changing. So you need to look at where you're getting your hires from and what the recruitment spend is. With the referral side, the majority of the spend is going to employees, which I think is an important point to mention. It's not going to a third-party recruitment media company. Most of it's going to your employees, which is a good destination. And then you should be looking at the kind of return you're getting. I'm not saying you should use one source over another. You just need to be aware of what your return is. And sources like that little squiggle is an infinity symbol. So returners, obviously there's not an infinite number of them, but it doesn't really cost you anything to keep in touch with them and ask them to come back. And we do see some coming back. And we saw that mandatory vaccination, when people left because of mandatory vaccination, and then, as you'll remember, everyone changed their mind, or the government changed its mind, and then people could come back, and about a third of them were coming back into the sector if you ask them. And organic and free advertising is word of mouth, and on those sort of sources of in the community, people just walk in and are interested in the job. Great, but you can't do much about pumping that up, apart from being a great employer. And then if you look at that, how long people stay, I like to look at 3-month or 12-week churn. When I was a home care provider, we had 10,000 staff, and we lost the majority of them in the first 12 weeks. A massive staff turnover in the first 12 weeks of employment. And that's really where your problems lie, partly to do with the welcome they have not being quite what it is, and lack of support, but more particularly the job attachment that they have when they come in. So we would expect to see, as we do from the statistics, people who have already worked for you staying through that period, much more resilient, and also employee referrals, much more resilient. They've been picked by a key member of your team and sold the job and explained personal care and all that sort of stuff. And then you've really got the higher staff turnover with the aggregators and the job boards. You can do things to improve this number, but broadly speaking, the majority of people looking for a job on the job boards are either already a care worker and are moving, and they're kind of sometimes job hoppers, or they need a local job and they haven't really paid attention to what is involved in care. So you do get great people from job boards. It's just you get a lot of drop off as well. It's a real numbers game. And social media, again, you don't often have that connection. So it's important to look at not only the sort of cost per hire and the contribution that a particular method of recruitment is making, but it's also very important to look at the tenure you're getting. How many hours of care am I getting on average from people from a particular source? And in the case of particularly, say, the job boards and any source you're using that has a high staff turnover, there is an implied re-recruitment cost. Because you've lost someone, you then need to spend the money and take the time to re-recruit them again. So this is often an invisible cost. Generally, a lot of recruitment costs are invisible, the impact on the business. And so that's one of the reasons it's not really been focused on as much as it should have been. So if I'm looking now, if I'm an in-house recruiter, I'll be thinking, what's my sourcing strategy for 2024? I'm probably have done some international recruitment. I would continue if I could to do that, but I'm accepting that I can't over rely on that source, and I need to move more towards local recruitment. And so this is just an example hiring mix. I think the key thing about this is you're doing more than one thing. And it's very important not to spend all your time on digital recruitment methods and not getting out in the community to build those relationships that are going to bring high quality people in who are very local. So it's really, really important to create a mix. This mix will vary for every employer, but I would be looking to try and get as much as I could recruitment from connections that are really close to my organization. And that might mean employee referral, returners, word of mouth, targeting family carers. That would be the sort of way I would be moving. And I'd continue with my job boards, but I would be testing different wording. I would be making sure that my candidate experience and recruitment experience from a candidate's perspective is really, really good. So just to summarize on that, I wouldn't over rely on any channel. This is just going to bring you a lot of risk. And I would try and blend the digital methods and the real world methods. And if you go too digital, and AI being a perfect example of that, and probably Scott's going to talk about that, so I won't do it now. But there is a danger of removing the personal relationship contact out of the recruitment process, because the people we're trying to find are not going to choose this job for the money. They are going to choose this job because they have a calling for care and they love this sort of work, and those are the people we need. And a lot of them are really, really local to you. So it's very important to think of your local recruitment strategy. Who do we know locally? And probably a lot of your next care workers are walking past your door while we're on this call. As I mentioned, measure and test everything, really, really important. So that's a kind of quick jog through the top of the funnel, diversifying your sources, the likely returns you're going to get, understanding those returns and testing. And a little bit of homework if you are interested in getting understanding more about this. I know Scott's got a couple of recent LinkedIn articles that I'm sure he'll signpost that are helpful. Also, I wrote the book Saving Social Care Now in its lime green cover, which indicates it's the latest version, the 2024 version of Saving Social Care. Loads of tips and tricks in that. If you want to get that, it's on Amazon, and the royalties, and you don't make any money as an author, by the way, in case you're interested in becoming one, though the royalties go to the Care Workers charity. So that's all I wanted to share with you, and I'll open for questions if there are time, but I know Dudley's pretty brutal in terms of moving us on if I've overstayed my welcome.
No, Neil, you're always welcome. You've always been coming to our live shows, be it in Croydon or anywhere else, as well as being virtual as well. Just one quick question I want to jump in before anyone else, they can ask a question as well. your diagram or graph showcased obviously the less staff coming in or spend from overseas. Overseas? Why has there been such a huge jump to overseas if the returns on that can be better from other areas? So why has everyone, do you believe, has gone to overseas workforce? Just ask.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it was taken up so rapidly, and these things often happen without us having data. So I mean, the best source of data in the sector, of course, Ali's already is here, but it's very frustrating for Skills for Care as well, I'm sure, to try and get data that's both timely and represents the sector. It's so frustrating. So we are kind of in the dark a bit. I think international recruitment has, if you look at retention, then in theory, you're going to sign people up for 3 years or 5 years or whatever, and there's a retention piece to that. It's much easier, in my view, to implement if you're a residential care provider than home care, for a whole range of reasons, but not least of which the ability in home care is a very, kind of, if you look at the work patterns through the day, it's very difficult to give someone consistent work. We've always struggled in the home care sector to offer guaranteed hours, and and that's, you have to guarantee the salary. And I think we're seeing an awful lot of fallout from that, because we know there have been pop-up home care providers who have piled in people from overseas and swamped a local authority area. And I'm thinking what I'm hearing from, say, Sheffield and Exeter. I'm sure there are other examples in London, and that has upset the local market, disrupted the local market. So I think we've gone into this. It's probably like eating an entire cheesecake. Seemed really good at the time, and now there's a bit of a kind of hangover to it. So I would say it's super important from a workforce perspective to have around a quarter, which we have achieved now, of your workforce being not born here, migrant workers, is a really good thing, because migrant workers tend to be hard workers, have the right values, and they tend to work. And I'm going to pick a home care example now, on average 48 hours a week, compared to when I was in home care, a local would work 22. So each of those workers, and the most recent data we have is 70,000, but I know Skills for Care know that number's going to go up again before it goes down. You're getting 2 for 1. So I think it's very appealing to employers to do that, despite the admin hassle. But I think the tide is certainly turning now, and if those people leave, you really notice.
I think I've just to chip into that, and I think it's a really good point. Great info as always, Neil. But this covers two things, and it's really important that Neil's talked about. So you can't improve what you don't measure, which Neil's talked about, your metrics. But the problem that you've got is you've got applicant tracking systems that are designed to be used by professional recruiters. And you've got people that are not professional recruiters, office administrators, ex-care workers, performing recruiter tasks in organisations that don't really understand recruitment. And it's the toughest it's ever been. There are recruitment companies going under at the moment because of this. But on your point of the international thing, we lost that. This is terrible for us, but it makes the point. So we had a domiciliary care provider that had outsourced. Previous costs in-house were about £85,000 when they looked at 2 recruiters, Indeed costs, other advertising channels they were using. They'd had a net gain of 5 people. So the 5, after 12 months, they were actually gone from 45 permanent staff to 50. So you've got £85,000 cost to grow your team by 5 people. We came in, I think our costs were about 65k with all the Indeed, but we were spending more money on Indeed. We'd reduced it, but we got more applicant figures. And we got a phone call after working with us for 3 years saying, look, it's not personal, but what we've looked at is return on investment using Purple Tribe to recruit locally. We've hired 70 people through you guys over the last 12, 14 months. We've had a net gain of 24 staff, so it's like 5 times greater. And it's a 511% return on investment. And this is the bit that Neil's talking about, is that everybody said, well, you sponsor somebody, they'll stay here for 3 to 4 years. So what the calculation was is, through you guys, our staff locally stay with us 9 months. They work on average 26 hours. If I get someone in and sponsor them for 4 years, for example, they'll work 45 hours. They'll stay with us for 4 years. It's a 1,575% return on investment. So in that spreadsheet, I'm now seeing I make more money if I do this. So you abandon your recruitment. But what is interesting, the same company and the same people that were failing to get recruitment right prior Purple Tribe are now going to take over recruitment again. And they couldn't pick great people when the person was sat in the room opposite them and lived here. But a quick 20-minute Teams call and the promise that I'll get you a house and I'll buy a car and I'll do all this, what could go wrong? And suddenly we get a phone call. We're now 14 months later, and I get the question, what is everybody offering? What packages are out there? And I thought, that's a bit unusual. So I speak to the owner. We're still really good pals. Well, out of 10 people that I've hired, it's cost me £75,000 for 10 people with my sponsorship money now, because obviously you didn't used to have to pay for overseas workers when they came from Europe, but now we've got to pay the government 4 or 5k in sponsorship. 4 out of 10 have left already. So we've now paid £60,000-70,000 for 6 people. Nobody's made it over 7 months. The guy who said he was going to get a car didn't get a car, so he's not getting the hours that he was going to get. The other one said, I've gone somewhere else for more money, a better package. And they've paid all this money out, and it's still really no better. Now, I agree, dom care is a much trickier thing than residential. And I think if you look at companies like Abbott's Care, Camille, Neil, they've got 10% of their workforce are from overseas, but they spend a full month on cultural integration before they go in. They guarantee them the hours. They are so meticulous, and they're so much about integration and becoming part of the workforce that they do it well, and it works really well. But there are other companies that have just seen, it's going to sound harsh, but have just seen the pound signs and think, oh, if I just sponsor you, it'll all be fine. And people are still, regardless of where you come from, it doesn't guarantee, whether you're from Nepal, Zimbabwe, Romania, Leeds, it doesn't guarantee you're going to be a great care worker, but sponsoring doesn't guarantee success. And there's so many minefields that if you get that wrong, and my biggest worry is that people, if you've had to outlay £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 to bring somebody in to do a job, and they are rubbish. You find out once they start that they're not a very good carer. You can't just sack them off and send them back, because I think quality then starts suffering, because you'll probably put up with a lot worse of quality or lower quality because of the significant outlay that you've got just to get that person. So for us, we've lost people based on numbers on a spreadsheet, that what they thought it would work out. But we'll probably get that. I think we'll get that client back because it's not worked. It's not been the panacea that it should be. And it came down to money. Just that was it. Well, we'll make more money out of it.
I mean, I agree totally. I think that it's opened up such a can of worms. I think the bottom line is that recruitment can come in any shapes and sizes and forms, and I think there tends to be trends. And I think there was this whole element of the silver bullet was international recruitment, overseas recruitment, and I think, be it via the government's changes or people after a year or two in really realizing the impact of what's happened from their recruitment processes is another interesting thing as well. So definitely, I think it's an area to talk about. I'm conscious of time. So Neil, if you can actually put your details in the chat box if you'd like to, because I know you haven't done that potentially. If there's any other very urgent questions anyone wants to sort of suggest, they can put it in the chat box. We will also be able to get feedback, and then we'll also be recording of this as well. I know this is ongoing, so we're probably going to have another meeting Probably with these two, another masterclass on recruitment, maybe potentially on the retention side at some point. Other than that, I'm going to pass it over to Peter, please.
Okay. I mean, thanks, Dudley. Just to harp on a little more about international recruitment, having talked to people who went down the international recruitment route, again, I would agree that I don't think it's suitable for dom care, for DCAs. It doesn't work unless they're very clever, and I know one or two organisations that have done it well, and best of luck to them. What a couple of owner managers actually said to me was that they brought people in because they thought they could control them. Exactly as been said, they got them for a contracted period. They weren't going to allow them to leave. Those organisations had high staff turnovers. Their retention was poor because their culture was poor. And they were very miffed when the people they brought in left because they didn't get what was promised. And certainly one of them has had the license suspended. And probably that's quite right. And also a couple of providers came up with the mind-numbing statement that as they were international recruits, they weren't governed by English law, so they could pay them less. And when they were told, no, they're in the UK, they have to be treated as if they were English. Well, why is that? They're international recruits. I only want to pay them whatever, £5 an hour or something. I mean, it stretches one's credibility, but how can they expect someone to come in from wherever it is and live in London, where, of course, we know the streets are paved with gold, on £5 an hour? It's absolutely crazy. And as already been said, again, to harp on that, it gives social care yet more, bad news. But to the positive, you've had 3 fantastic presentations today. I'm surprised there's so few of you in the room, but there's a huge amount of information there. The meeting has been recorded, and when Dudley has done whatever Dudley does with that, we'll put it on the website. We'll put the presentations on the website. You've got the contacts for these people. You've got the contacts for Ali. You've got Dudley or myself's contacts. Talk to us, call us, ask questions. And there's a fantastic amount of resource there to help you with your recruitment processes. So please use them, and do look after your staff, because you're either one sort of business or another. You either see your staff as being on your asset side of your business or on the liability side of your business. And certainly in social care, they should be on the asset side, because they are your link with the people you look after. And those are the people that bring you money in.
And finally, before we go, Peter, if you want to ask any questions, do get in contact with Peter or I, or go to the website. We also have a WhatsApp group as well. So we are constantly trying to update you with all the changes, and they are rapidly changing all the time.
Yep.
We also will support lots of information, either from Skills for Care with Ali, who sends a lot of information as well. But we also work alongside and connect all the time with the likes of Purple Tribe and Scott, and we speak to Neil as well. So please get in touch. Don't be shy, because actually it's going to be more helpful for you in your busy day lives to actually have a partner like LCAS on board to support you. So thank you very much for everyone for turning up.
Okay, many thanks all. Thanks very much to the 3 of you for presentations. Thanks, Dudley. And we'll be in contact. All the best.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.